Hello, good morning, and welcome to NewsFile. This is your most authoritative news analysis platform. And as you know, as always, on NewsFile, we put Ghana first. So the secessionists, who have been causing all the trouble, even upon the arrest of as many as 60 of its members. Well, that's questionable because questions are being raised about whether or not all the people arrested are actually members of the secessionist groups. We'll find out if that's exactly true. And President Mahama has been, indicting President Akufo-Addo for not dealing with the issue seriously. How else? What are the alternatives that he has to propose for dealing with this bunch of criminals? Then the NPP and the NDC have been talking about corruption, but largely in their manifesto, buried in there. We want to deal with that question this morning. It was the winner for the 2016 election. It certainly must be at the top in 2020. Who has the blueprint? Who has the blueprint to resolve this canker? We will be right back to deal with the vexed matters. Welcome back to NewsFile. This is your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on NewsFile, we put Ghana first. I titled SAMSON'S Take, COVID-19 not over. Political leaders show example. The novel COVID-19 has killed over 1 million people. It has robbed people of their jobs and livelihoods as businesses fold up. It has devastated economies, and the journey to recovery won't be as easy a task. The dead include 301 people in Ghana, big and small. This is despite the fact that God has largely spared Africa. Government applaud itself for measures taken, including unplanned spending of over 54 million to feed the poor and some 600 million in a stimulus package for businesses. Disinfecting schools, markets, and supplying PPEs to health facilities and masks to reduce the spread. We passed laws that saw people thrown into jail and paying hefty fines for violating safety protocols. The president, who has through his regular broadcasts done a great job of constantly reminding us to practice social distancing among strict observance of the COVID-19 protocols, just extended the life of the law for mandatory wearing of masks. Our leaders must not only talk, but also show the way. Why are they suddenly being such bad examples in the midst of this public health crisis? If you haven't followed the political campaigns, including by flag bearers of the NPP and NDC, visit their social media handles and check out what they have been advertising without any hesitation. Now, you have been watching the clips as I speak to you. Continue to watch these clips of the milling crowds at the campaigns without a sense of the times, and tell me if it is these same politicians making COVID-19 protection laws and preaching protection protocols. The pictures you see, absolute chaos, the very things that breed COVID-19. Now, let's watch President Akufo-Addo in one of his admonitions to us.
It is vitally important that each one of us, in all parts of the country, continue to observe the social distancing and house hygiene protocols, for they are the weapons of our defense against the virus. We can defeat this virus if we all commit ourselves to respecting all the measures that have been outlined.
So as you have seen in these pictures of the noise and the milling crowds falling upon each other, the same president is the one encouraging the very same thing he has been preaching against. If you have heard Dr. Bawumia, if you have heard President John Mahama, they have taken platforms to preach that we should adhere to the protocols. They are the very same people encouraging crowds, breaching the law right in their face. Where is the integrity and love for these poor and vulnerable people who will mass up at these campaign grounds, and some cannot afford a mask and won't get anything close to the medical attention these leaders will get if they fall sick? The COVID-19 is not over. We endanger everyone if we encourage disregard for the protocols and laws. If you doubt, ask President Trump. That's my take. Now let's get to meet our guests for this morning. And we have Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa, the Honorable MP for Norton and Ranking Member, Foreign Affairs Committee of Parliament. Also here in the studio is Richard Ahiagba. Richard Ahiagba is the Executive Director of the Dankwa Institute. Joining us via Zoom are Dr. THEO ACHEAMPONG, economist, political risk analyst, and senior fellow, Imani Africa. Also, Professor Kwesi Ening, who is Director, Faculty of Academic Affairs and Research, Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center. Gentlemen, good morning, and thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning.
Good morning, Samson.
Right. Now, thank you. Before we start, just in some 30 seconds, why are you politicians suddenly going around the place and engaging crowds as though COVID-19 is over?
Good morning to you, Samson. Good morning to the panel and our viewers and listeners across the globe. It's a very important matter you have raised, and we must be sincere about it, that we have to do more to get our people to comply with the protocols. It's good that you are raising awareness and reminding all of us about our obligations. It's a matter that I believe that as political parties, we should take responsibility, that our gatherings should be socially distanced. The irony is that we all agree that there are no rallies for this campaign, at least this far. The protocols are clear that there will be no rallies. However, you've had rally-like events. I have been with the Running Mates campaign, Professor Nana Jopukwajiman, where she insists that protocols are observed. So she would make sure that in terms of the pre-event discussions, she asks those questions of her team. However, as she approaches and upon arrival, it becomes people put their chairs away, social distancing is ignored, and people take off their masks, or sometimes they pull down the mask, to the chin level. So it's one of those things that you say that all of us are not doing enough.
Some of the footages, President Mahama, throwing masks into the crowd. Yeah. And people are actually falling upon each other just to pick a mask. I don't get it.
No, I mean, it's important to stress that some people in our country would think that masks are so affordable. But particularly for some of us who are MPs in rural areas, we know how important it is to make it available. And we have been doing that. And I'm glad you point out the fact that President Mahama, indeed, all our candidates, including members of parliament, all parliamentary candidates, have been sharing masks, even before events. But sometimes it's becoming more or less like, I think the public education has not gone down very well. So some people want to even keep the mask as some, if you like, paraphernalia or memorabilia, and they are not really concerned about the health implications. So we all need to draw awareness, and platforms like this should be used to call for greater responsibility. I mean, and it's timely you raise this.
So
look
just show leadership.
Look at what's happening in the United States.
You guys have spoken to us enough. Show leadership. Dr. THEO ACHEAMPONG, where you are, you even are in the risk of going into another lockdown, as we understand. What do you make of the pictures and the videos you are seeing about how our political leaders, including the president, are conducting themselves?
So as we say, good morning, I think talk is cheap, and you can clearly see that on the campaign trail by the political leadership. So on one hand, we have the president and the government advocating for us to wear masks, practice social distancing, and all of that which comes with it, which is all great. But they don't seem to be following it themselves, particularly on the campaign trail, which is a bit shocking. But also kind of understanding when you look at Ghana's, history and the history of compliance with some of these initiatives. So where I am here in the UK, there's very strong enforcement on it. In fact, households cannot even mix as we speak currently, and groups of more than 6 cannot mix, all because there is a second wave of the virus currently going on in the country, and there are attempts to bring it down. And that doesn't seem to be the case. We've just been lucky. The point is that we've been largely spared any major, deaths, etc. in Ghana, but we cannot be complicit. So I actually support the call that you've just made, that we should see our politicians and political class taking it a bit more seriously, as in the next few weeks we head into the heated season of the political rallies and campaigns.
Thank you, Dr. THEO ACHEAMPONG. And Richard, so what was the purpose of the president passing those EIs, where he says there should be no political rallies? The law prohibits political rallies. The law is clear about how many people can actually gather, or forget it, even if we have lifted. Then we say there should be social distancing. We should enforce the protocols. There should be mask wearing mandatory. That law expired about 2 weeks ago, and then he renewed it. So what's the purpose? I don't know if that's the purpose. This particular thing, I don't know if that's the purpose, but it doesn't look as if the president is taking extreme caution to ensure that he's protecting himself, to the point that since COVID-19 showed its head, I have seen that a chair is carried for him wherever he goes. He goes with his own chair. So what is this? Endangering the people and everybody else.
Well, Samson, good morning to my co-panelist and your good self and the viewers. I think that you spoke my mind when you were saying that we should take leadership. What you describe about the president is showing leadership. By being exemplary, you expect the population to follow his lead, and I think that's the best example you want to leave out there. But what has happened generally across board, even take away the campaign, when you move out of Accra, and I'm sure you see that and all of us see that, people don't take wearing the nose mask seriously. They don't wear. There are people who still believe that the virus is not even real. So it's a state of mind already that where the government is faced with and trying to overcome. And the laws that is passed to sanction those behaviors, you can only apply those laws if there is mass, compliance. But if the whole population is not complying with the law, you probably end up arresting everybody and locking everybody up. So it's a situation where we need to continue to educate. And most of the issue that you've shown, the pictures you've shown, is a spontaneous gathering of people. And my brother alluded to instances in their own gathering where people were warned to use their mask, but then suddenly, spontaneously, that goes out of the window. So it's a question of continuous education.
No, why should you, the politicians, and this example where the president goes into the market center, what does he expect when he goes into the market center? That the people will stand back and watch, and that they will not mail in like they did?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing you expect of the two of us to come here and behave. Okay, we can decide to misbehave. So he goes there, and per the education that is given and his continuous insistence and his own example of wearing the mask, demonstrate that there is something of a change about our lives, and he expects as a leader the people to comply. And with what we're known to be true about life in Ghana is that as far as COVID-19 is concerned, outside of Accra, even within Accra, people don't wear the mask for whatever reason, and I think that your platform and your elevation of it should engender that discussion forward, so we can let people know.
Let's hope so, because this state cannot afford it.
Absolutely.
Cannot afford the consequences of, you know, a spiraling out of control of COVID-19. We simply can't afford it. It is God that has saved Africa, else we would have been damned and doomed. So let's just stop it. Let's stop these things that will bring COVID-19 to this country.
No, absolutely agree. And I was going to propose that perhaps it's time to review the campaigning so far. It's become evident that you cannot have our candidates go out
without
and there will be no massing up. I mean, people just throw caution to the wind. So perhaps, do we just go virtual, have a total virtual campaign, forget about going out there, outdoor?
For now, the protocols are there. Just obey them. The laws have been made. Just obey them. But when those making the laws are not obeying the laws, that's really the difficulty.
No, you see leadership wearing the mask, you know,
poor citizens are the ones that, because I see I saw your campaign launches, your manifesto launches. You were adhering to the protocols. But when you go into these people, they do not have the opportunity of the luxury of the things that you do when you protect yourselves.
That's the spontaneity of the environment. And I think that more should be done on the front of education, I think.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Now let's go to the issue of the secessionists. Okay. As we know, there has been a very important meeting that was held yesterday in the VOLTA region, a meeting that was held at the behest of the chiefs, because they are concerned that this group of people, you know, gave us such a surprise, which many people say ought not to have been a surprise, because the state has been aware of this group and their activities and threats, not veiled threats, open threats, for a long time. So how did it happen that they held people to ransom? They seized 2 police stations, actually cost a life and harmed people. When I heard about the number of pellets that were shot into the police commander who was taken to 37 here from the VOLTA region, I was surprised. They simply intended to kill him. Just kill him, waste him, so to speak. So how is this going to be resolved? As we understand, 54 of them have been processed for purposes of, you know, being tried in the courts. Out of that is a total of 60 of them, or the 61 that have been arrested so far. Beyond that, what else will be done? Because from the very first day of the arrest, the next day, they went to the STC yard in the region and burnt, you know, an STC bus. Initially, there was intelligence that they intended to burn the whole central market. What else can we expect of them, and what should be done to avoid what they may be capable of doing? So Let's begin with you, Mr. Okudzeto Ablakwa.
So, Samson, this is a matter that is so vexed, so complicated, that is very serious, that borders on the stability, the territorial integrity of our country. As Member of Parliament for North Tongue, you do know that I bore the brunt of the invasion or insurgency of September 24, the dawn of that day. As I speak to you, I have lost 2 of my constituents, not 1, 2. Emmanuel Kale, the innocent bystander in Japon, and Seira Matichobi, who's from Mefe. I have visited the families, and I want to use this opportunity to renew my condolences and extend my sympathies to the families and to all those who got injured, including the police commanders. What happened, Samson? You would think it's a chapter from a Hollywood movie. To have 2 police stations, and the only police stations that really protect us, that we run to for soccer, the Mefe police station, the Aveima police station, and it appeared to be a very well coordinated attack at about 1:40 a.m., pretending to be coming to lodge a complaint. They just distracted the police personnel on duty and then swamped in their numbers, took them hostage.
So that's how they did?
That's what they
did.
They
went there pretending to lodge a complaint?
Yes, holding one of their own, handcuffed, and then as they tried to take the statement, then the others swam in and just take over. There were many. They tell us that not less than 70 per police station. And they knew exactly what to do and where to go. They went straight for the armories, managed to open them. They showed some level of sophistication that is mind-blowing. Took out weapons, all the weapons they could find. So at the Aveima police station, we have been told by the police commander that 19 weapons, so 15 AK-47, 4 pump-action guns. They did a similar operation at the Mefe police station. They had 2 weapons in their armory. They then managed to free the inmates in the cells and replace them with the police after stripping them naked. They didn't stop there, Samson. They continued to the district assembly in North Tongue, beat up the security on duty, beat them to pulp, managed to get in, ransacked the assembly, took out all the computers, documents, and then some furniture, and managed to find keys to the pickup that the DC uses and added it to their fleet. Remember that they had also managed to take the Sogakofa police pickup.
Okay.
And that police pickup was leading a reinforcement team from the divisional command, headed by...
How daring.
Yeah, very daring. What the divisional police commander tells me, and last night we spoke, is that he is still wondering how they overpowered them by the superior firepower they exhibited and the level of precision, because they engaged them. They engaged them in a gun battle. But clearly they had more sophisticated weapons and the level of precision, you know, and it's totally mind-blowing. So you have that pickup taking over, and then they disarmed the reinforcement team, took their weapons, including the police commander's pistol. Now, while all of this was going on, it's important to stress that they were in no hurry to leave the place after overpowering the police stations. They managed to still parade the streets with these vehicles in jubilant moods. They then stopped the river sun winning vehicles. My constituency is the center for a lot of sun winning, you know, from the VOLTA River, the bed of the VOLTA River. They stopped these trucks, led them to the boundary between Sege and Aveime, and then asked them to offload the suns, blocked the street, and then erected their flags. They had also replaced the police flags at the police stations with their Western Togoland flags, and then continued to jubilate. I had spoken to the National Security Minister at about 4 a.m. and he assured that a reinforcement team was being sent, and they knew the difficulties that the team from Sugakope had encountered. I still think the response was rather slow, and that we could have acted faster to round them up. As it is now, they managed to really finish their operation and left the scene. Remember that at the same time, simultaneously, across the river, also in my constituency, JoyNews, they had also carried out the same operation, erected barriers, and claimed to have taken over the VOLTA region. And my constituency is the gateway to the region. So their understanding is that if we take over North Tongue and we erect barricades, then we have taken over the VOLTA region. Quite an interesting way of thinking. And for hours, prevented commuters from entering the VOLTA region, generated so much traffic and chaos, and they were still very jubilant. And remember that they had vehicles that they could add to their fleet. They had a Ford vehicle, which they continued to use to foment trouble. Finally, the reinforcement team arrives, detachment of military police. There were gunshots, exchange of fire. That's where Emmanuel Kale, a young coconut seller at the Salvation Junction in Japong, sadly lost his life. And most of the people who did this, the real perpetrators, spirited away. So a lot of the people who have been picked up, the 31 initially picked up at Japong. Indeed, I raised this matter when we met the regional minister during the week. The regional minister indicates that they are looking closely at 9 of them. 9 appears to know something about the group, but the rest, they admit, they don't seem to know anything about the group. They just had to round all of them up. So we continue to appeal that it's important that the innocent ones are released as quickly as possible. You know, but Samson, this whole matter, as a Pan-Africanist, I am not oblivious of the fact that this is one of the relics of colonialism. And we need public education. We cannot denounce colonialism. We cannot complain about what the imperialists did to us, how they divided us, how they looted this country, and raped us, exploited us. And yet, in today modern Ghana, some people want to go back to these relics. These relics that, I mean, Otto von Bismarck and his colleagues sat in Berlin in 1884 and decided to divide Africa amongst themselves. This whole British Togoland versus German Togoland, that's the genesis, that's where it comes from. So we cannot be denouncing colonialism, say we are free and independent people. The very young people who are even agitating for this say that we want freedom, we want to be respected, we want our rights valued, and yet we want to go back to these colonial strictures. It's the paradox. It's so glaring.
A good number of them are even very ignorant about what they are pursuing.
Very, very ignorant. The level,
as far as the landmarks concerning what exactly is the Togoland that they are supposed to be advocating for is concerned.
Absolutely, something. Absolutely. I mean, because, and I'm glad you raised this matter, because in my constituency, which today is bearing the brand, We were never part of Western Togoland. Okay. The entire Tong, the entire Anglong has never been part of Western Togoland.
Right.
We have been all along, historically, been part of the Gold Coast and Ghana project. If you look at the plebiscite of 9th May 1956, we didn't take part in the election. We didn't vote. Western Togoland is today parts of Pando, Hohohoi, of Dagbon, Mamprusi, the Boku areas, parts of Togo, parts of Benin. You know, so the level of ignorance is shocking, something, and the pollution and the total distortion of history. I mean, look, this Western Togoland.
Why have we allowed these secessionist groups, the Homeland Study Group, and the two others, Restoration, whatever, all these years to sort of, you know, proselytize, indoctrinate the people in this manner?
Look, growing up in the VOLTA region, for example, and I'm sure, Richard, you heard that the plebiscite is a 50-year decision, and that after 50 years, pollution. Nothing like that. I have looked at UN Resolution 101. I've looked at all the
and you know that's what they say all the time.
But there's no basis.
They've granted interviews internationally to international media. And this is what they
the plebiscite was a one-off decision, and I have the votes here. Those who were for the union with Gold Coast, the British Togoland should join the Gold Coast. At the end of the 9th May plebiscite, which was supervised by the UN agent Eduardo Espinosa, for 93,090 against 67,492. It was a permanent decision, settled. We were not to go back in 50 years or 60 years or 70 or 100 years. In any case, if you look at this colonial division of Western Togoland, I have here this book, which is A History of the Ewe People by Jacob Spade. And Jacob Spade, I must state for the records, is the most authoritative anthropologist on the Ewe people. I mean, Jacob Spade is like what Rattray is to the Ashantis, or Christella to the Equiapims. I mean, you can't go wrong with Jacob Spade. So authoritative. And this work was sponsored by the German Foreign Office, the Colonial Department. And he presents the map on page 2 of his book, The Introduction. And he talks about the Ewe people as they took control over in 1890. And you have Togo, at the time a population of 1.5 million. You have Cameroon, population of 3.5 million. Southwest Africa, 200,000 people. East Africa, 7 million people. And this footnote is interesting. It says, assuming that the treasures of a colony are in its population, then Togo is not only the most prolific, the most fruitful, but also the wealthiest German colony in Africa. We should therefore not regret the work and capital we are investing in Togo. So this Western Togoland, I mean, dream, which is worse than a wet dream, is just hubris, really. It goes beyond VOLTA region. Indeed, many parts of the VOLTA was not part of it. Present-day northern, upper east, parts of even Bono, the Yeji area, parts of the present-day Togo, present-day Cameroon, present-day, because if you look at Southeast and East Africa, you are talking about Burkina Faso, Benin. The Ewe people are spread all over. How are these people going to get these sovereign nations now to hive off parts of their country to help them achieve this dream? It's totally impossible. It's the most reckless and most treasonable thing to even think about.
Okay.
And you see, if I may...
I want you to pause, and then I'll return to you to have a conversation about what is the solution. Because it does appear the solutions have been failing us over the period. Yes, so Richard, and I gathered as Sami spoke, you kept nodding, and you kept, sort of prodding him and encouraging him on the points that he was making. What for you sticks out? And the two of you are sons of the land. So what a better way to have a discussion.
Yeah.
What do you, how do you proceed with this discussion, looking at the younger people who, like I said, have been proselytized in a way that they don't seem to be ready to listen to any other alternative view, which is actually the correct and accurate history?
Well, thank you. I agree largely with the history and background of the Transvolta Togoland, and so there's no disagreement there. But the only question is really the endeavor of this group. I think the Western Togoland Restoration Front is the other one.
Right.
And their pursuit of this objective in a location that is not part of what they are seeking. And in seeking that, across board, there is no unanimous or more or less collective decision that this is what we want. So then that reduces their effort to a few people with an agenda to create mayhem, which I agree with you when you call them criminal, because then you are locating your pursuit in a place that is not part of what you're seeking. Now, the challenge I find with this, which is the challenge people encounter, countries encounter, I think Cameroon had to deal with that in Nigeria at some point when people are seeking some of these things, is how do you deal with them in ways that you don't create incidental or unintended casualties in the population? And I think that has been the bane of having to deal with these people. But going forward, I think that there's a need to engage and decisively try to smoke out these individuals and deal with them, because what they are seeking is not justified. There is no support for it, and so therefore there must be a need to actually deal with it. Now, the young people
at the meeting of these chiefs, and even before they met, you see the unanimity of voice in condemning them,
the act,
and actually proposing earlier, some of the chiefs proposing that they will want to let their warriors, step in if the state needs extra security.
I think that is comforting, and it's good that we have that unanimous position to try to deal with this. And in fact, in the Volta region, by and large, there is no support for this, and people would show up just to watch the silliness, of it, and they now got caught into all of this. But if you really want to see it, less than any, maybe just the people who are gathered there are the ones who are feeling this. So the general population of the region certainly is not in support of that. So that is the basis for that wide condemnation. But what we need...
We have heard the contrary also, that you have groups, particularly the Homeland Study Group and the Restoration Group, that they are funded. Even government says that it is aware of financiers. The minister for the region has also been, some of these things have been said against him, and he says these are malicious, defamatory, and he may even take, an action against people for saying that against him.
In the nature of things, and the stories of these kinds of rebellion in other countries, they almost all the time, if you look at the trend, they're funded by interest outside the country. And oftentimes will be natives who are outside, who are engaged in some kind of pursuit for relevance or for whatever objective they're seeking. So that link is there, and I won't be surprised if it's the same in the case of the Volta region or this group, that they are obtaining funding from familiar people from the area who are interested in causing this kind of disturbance. But generally speaking, I think that because the population in general is not in support of it, they don't have public will behind them, and the complete geographical area is not pursuing this, it makes it easy now to deal with, to try to isolate and then handle them single-handedly in a way that really quashes this thing. I see this as a plot by some people, and if permitted, I think, in my view, looking at it, the absence of general support for it and the isolation of the Bator traditional area, which does not belong to the place, appears to me some people just interested in creating chaos, and for whatever end, I'm not sure, but we can speculate.
We understand that some of the recruitment activities they have been able to do, they have been successful at it because they do it, you know, sort of a 419, telling people, unsuspecting people, that the Ghana Army is recruiting. So they are able to get the people to join them, and then they take them to the forest and they are training them. We have seen their groups, and they seem organized. Contrary to, you know, the way we want to wish them away and suggest that they are some, you know, non-entity or a group that, you know, does not amount to anything by way of strategy and thinking.
I think the approach is okay so far. What has been done, and yesterday the meeting, the sentiments coming out of the meeting is that there's going to be continual engagement, and I think that beyond the chiefs, we need to, the traditional leaders, we need to get to civil society and the population by and large. There must be widespread education to let people understand that this is inimical to the interest of the country and the people in the VOLTA region, and that their pursuit is not our pursuit. Their pursuit is their selfish parochial interest that they're pursuing to create mayhem and to destabilize what we have built together as a country. And that education and getting the people to rally around the flag and make sure that we are moving this country forward as one. I think that education will undermine their presence anywhere and move us forward.
You have launched already deep into the solutions in, you know, stopping this. I'll go to Dr. THEO ACHEAMPONG, but Dr. THEO ACHEAMPONG, listen to Togbi Teprehodo, who is the Vice President of the VOLTA Regional House of Chiefs. And let's hear him first.
That what has happened, or the events that happened over the weekend and last night, are all plain criminal acts. I think that's the premise from which we should start all the talk. And you see, as far as all of us are concerned, even if these people claim to have some case, I don't think that they are bringing that case up in the proper way. We live in a civilized society, and I think that what people ought to do to articulate their grievances is to follow due process. The mere fact that they have resorted to these kinds of acts, which are criminal in nature, for some of us, makes it very difficult for anybody to even throw any sympathy at them. That is the starting point of all these discussions. Because if you go on this kind of rampage, you cause bodily injury to people. Death has resulted. And as we have stated in our press statement, innocent people have even been arrested. I don't think this kind of thing all very well for any group of people who would want to be heard.
Right. So, Vice President of the VOLTA Regional House of Chiefs, Togbi Hodo IV, and Dr. THEO ACHEAMPONG, you listen to this chief speak in the manner he speaks, and he makes no room even for any, attempt to treat these guys with kid gloves, as it may be said. And this is a lawyer, a very senior lawyer at that. How do you propose? What do you see, and how do you propose we go about this situation?
Yeah, thank you once again. Yeah, I mean, the act itself may be criminal, but the solution to it is multifaceted. And as Honorable Ablako has actually just eloquently explained, to really get to the solution, you need to understand the genesis of the issue. In fact, I was drawn to this Togoland issue back in August of 2016, when it first got a lot of traction in the media. And I decided to do quite extensive research to really sort of also get my head around why some particular group of people would want to secede from the sovereign state of Ghana.
I must confess, I was surprised learning that you were writing about this subject matter. We know that when it comes to petroleum and economy, then your name pops up. But it comes to, this matter, and I find that you're writing about it. Yes, so proceed.
Yes. And funny enough, the writing actually has become sort of one of the reference articles on this issue. Mm-hmm. I'm not necessarily a historian or a security analyst. I'm just somebody who has an interest in the matter at hand and anything concerning the sovereign nation of Ghana. I think, yes, the history is go back to the 1884 Berlin Conference and the carving up of Africa, and then subsequently the 1956 plebiscite, in which there was almost a vote of 2:1. So Honorable Blacker gave you the numbers of 93,000 people voting for the union against 67,000 roughly against. And the region, also the fact that the particular region in question, the Togoland, is not just a question of Eves per se, but there are other ethnic groups, encompassed in that whole border landscape or demarcation. But fast forward, you begin to see a number of interesting events happen after 2016 or August of 2016, when the group becomes much more kind of vociferous. So in between in 2017, we had the group intending to actually launch some number of campaigns. In 2019, about 9 members were arrested, including, if you remember, a 7th Army officer who wanted to plan an attack. And then in 2020, we saw 21 recruits of the group being arrested at a paramilitary training facility at Doje in the VOLTA region. What it all tells me is that this shouldn't really come as a surprise per se. The antecedents have been there, or the intelligence on the ground did point to the group growing in capability and growing in scope. And so the attack over the last weekend was one that was very well executed. It was well coordinated. I mean, the mere fact that they can actually seize a police station, not 1, but 2, and seize over 10, AK-47 assault rifles, and block a major highway over 6 hours, causing delays on either side, does indicate to me that the group has actually expanded in their operational capability and scope. And speaking to some of my intelligence sources in Accra, and indicates that they are likely being funded by vested groups on both sides, not the political parties, but I mean in Lomé and then also in Accra, and by people in the diaspora. So I don't wish I take the threat of the group as quite credible. And I think clearly what we are likely to see going forward, even if the acts are criminal and you prosecute some of them, we might actually end up seeing 1 or 2 of such low sophistication attacks on certain facilities and targets going forward. Because I think the underlying issues about, the supposed marginalization of the region, the ethnic sentiments, the sort of pan-Ewe nation state agenda, and the support of the communities even themselves in some of these places, does indicate to me that not until we address those core issues, the group will still be pushing or advocating for a number of these interests. So yes, the criminal acts side and the prosecution is good, as the chiefs and others have called for. But I really think that going forward, it really needs a multifaceted approach. So I would like to see the regional House of Chiefs actually being much more involved in the discourse. I'd like to see the Council of State also being much more involved in the discourse. And I actually like to see some sort of mediation talks, right, on both sides, where you bring the different groups, because it's not just the Homeland Study Foundation. There are 2 or 3 other groups, including the restoration of the Western Togoland group and try and resolve the issue at the core. Because fundamentally, the nation or the sovereign state of Ghana must remain intact, and the issue of the plebiscite has been settled. It is not a 50-year thing, and so we need to really then again on the third front deepen the education and entrench the education to disabuse the minds of a lot of these youth who feel like they don't belong to the nation, the sovereign nation of Ghana.
Okay, now just hold on. I want us to listen to Dr. Emmanuel Bombande, board chair for the Global Partnership for the Prevention of Armed Conflict. But I return with a substantive question to people like you, Colonel retired Festus Abuaje, and Dr. Kwesienin, who suggest that whilst we deal with them on the criminal front, there should be some mediation, negotiation of sort. How do you deal with a group or persons whose action appear clearly to fall under the UN's definition of terrorism? You deal with them in the manner some of you are suggesting. Let's listen to Dr. Emmanuel Bombande first.
What these people are doing is creating, for me, a time-wasting strategy that reinforces how they have nothing to offer but truly just to be factors of destabilization. That is why it's important to re-emphasize that such a perspective makes it incumbent on government not to handle people they have arrested in a manner that gives credence to the misplaced views of these opportunists.
Okay.
And to that extent, therefore, we need to handle this very well so that these opportunists do not say, look at how they are even treating the people they have arrested. Because these 31 people, if I listen to counsel Mr. Donko, should be respected. The other day we spoke, Mr. Donko even talked about how they were not fed. They should be well treated and humanely treated to exemplify that the modern democratic state of Ghana takes care of everybody with fairness and equity. And the more they do that, the more these opportunities are exposed and the more their adventure should immediately end so that Ghana can have its peace, conduct a peaceful election, a peaceful transition, and continue to reinforce and deepen its democratic tenets and development prospects. What these people are doing is creating, for me, a time-wasting strategy.
So that's Dr. Emmanuel Bombande. And THEO ACHEAMPONG and those who think like you in the way of suggesting some negotiation or mediation, you want to also hear President Akufo-Addo and more particularly Dr. Bawumia, who clearly rules out any option for, engaging them in some negotiation. And I'd like you to listen to President Mahama also, who suggests that we're actually, treating them with kid gloves. Last week I confirmed to you from the Attorney General's Department that, like you gave the statistics, over the period they have been trying to cause one trouble or the other, and as many as 45 of them, had been arrested and they were facing trial in various courts in Tamale, in Wa, Ho, and Accra. Now we have 55 more that have been arrested in this fresh situation. So let's listen to President Mahama, President Akufo-Addo, and Dr. Bawumia rule out completely any negotiations with them.
There's always the element of surprise. You can never do anything about it. That's why there are terrorist outrages. How come 9/11? The element of surprise is there at the beginning for all terrorist groups, the element of surprise. But after a time, when the system is working, you're no longer going to be surprised. So this they've done once or twice. Third, fourth, fifth time, it's not going to be so easy.
The President of the Republic of Ghana.
I don't want that impression at all. So somehow or rather, I'm feeling complacent about this. On the contrary,
but I hope so. Yeah, what's it? And I'm American first time. What's it? The
Ghana says someone can walk out of family when they send it a baby. Ya can't. As a man, could you grab me to be transferred? Yes, I have to be calm because institutions are in place. The security agencies are doing their work. They've started already and we'll see results. If I panic, the country panics. I mean, I'd say, if I had panicked, but no, I'm saying, my so sir, a Juma, Nakupa, Mr. Membabiano, some men so many eyes say me, him more, man, be him. That is not the purpose of leadership. I'm supposed to assure people that our country will work. The Kosovo VOLTA region, in the time of these handful, there's just a handful of people, these secessionists, we will deal with it. I have no doubt about it.
There's been some good intelligence work taking place, and we've seen some work. We're going to have to even double and triple the effort, but we've invested a lot in the security services since we came into office, and they've done quite a bit, both the police and the army, in terms of vehicles, in terms of ammunition, in terms of conditions of service, and so morale generally is very high. We've invested in a lot of intelligence equipment and so on, and so we're going to have to do more because it's a live situation that we are dealing with now on a minute by minute basis, and they are deploying the resources as we speak into these areas. So we're going to continue to do well, and I know that the directions of the president are quite clear in terms of dealing with this, and the military, police, national security, they are all focused on this matter now. We in Ghana need unity. This is not a partisan matter. We need unity across all regions, across all tribes, across all religions. We need to talk and provide necessary intelligence.
It's clear that this president hasn't taken this matter seriously. He hasn't. I mean, I don't know, the whole government, the security service, it's like they have a very lackadaisical attitude towards the issue of Western Togoland. There's nothing like Western Togoland. Ghana's territorial integrity is a sovereign matter. No inch of this country must be ceded to anybody. Our constitution makes it clear that we must protect the territorial integrity of Ghana. It's one of the most serious things that the constitution deals with. And that's why when I was president and we had that maritime boundary issue, I did not sleep over it. I didn't want 1 inch of our maritime boundary to be ceded to another country. And so we took definite action. And you could see that there was seriousness in what we did. This Western Togoland thing, I mean, either our security services are so inept or so confused or inefficient, which I don't want to believe. Because I've been commander-in-chief before, and I've worked with these same security services, and I know that intelligence is very key and that they are good at gathering intelligence. This Homeland Study thing was there when I was president, and yet we had people who infiltrated them, and we knew at every stage, what they were up to. But they were doing seminars and press conferences and things, Now they are becoming a bit more, bold. And the president must be taking bold action. We saw some of the videos. I saw one video where there were soldiers escorting a car. There was a car in the middle. And these boys holding the flag were right in front of them. And I said, but why are they escorting this vehicle instead of arresting these guys holding the flag? Because if you arrest them, then you're going to be able to get some more intel on what their operations are. It looks like the whole government is not serious about this. The president himself is not serious about it.
Right. So you heard President Akufo-Addo, Vice President Dr. Bawumia, and also President John Mahama. Now, Dr. THEO ACHEAMPONG, let me read two messages from two of our viewers. Yakubu Ibn Chambers says, I have no doubts whatsoever that the activities of the 31st century failed secessionists at the border town in the VOLTA region will be halted in their details and decisively dealt with. Sitting at the negotiation table with these criminals is a no. I will not describe them as secessionist groups, but terrorists. That's my emphasis. Terrorists who have infringed Ghana's territorial laws and must not be treated with kid gloves as usual. Then the next contributor says, that is Richard Nyama. Richard Nyama, he says, a UN panel on March 17, 2005 described terrorism as any act, quote, intended to cause death or serious bodily harm to civilians or non-combatants with the purpose of intimidating a population or compelling a government or an international organization to do or abstain from doing any act, unquote. Based on the above definition, aren't these guys terrorists? Emphasis, terrorists. And shouldn't we designate them as such and pass or use these laws to quash this group? Later, I'll refer to a law that Asan Kuma brought to all of our attention sometime late in the week. Yes, let's hear you. Why are you guys encouraging negotiation or mediation or whatever?
Look, there's a famous statement that one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter, right? it all depends on the perspective you're looking at things from. So all over the world, if you look at the history of armed conflict, etc., you can go in with a military solution or military approach, but if you don't address the fundamental root cause issues, you end up with a long drawn out, campaign of these groups either regrouping later and then staging attacks, left, right, center, or even expanding their scope beyond just like the immediate vicinity in the VOLTA region. But you could possibly see, attacks in other parts of the country. So my honest assessment of the situation leads me to believe that the solution is not necessarily a military one. Of course, the issue of the territorial integrity of Ghana is one that I think is settled, in law. But there are pent-up frustrations and issues with, some of the groups. However marginal they may be, clearly the fact that they can coordinate such an attack, the fact that they can, seize stations, etc., and even kill a person in the process, indicates to me that, look, they have grown in capability, they have grown in scope. So you can go arresting all of them, you can gather your intel, and you can, use all the military might that you have at your disposal. But if you don't address what is driving the conflict, such as the supposed perceived marginalization, or that we don't even belong to the sovereign history or the sovereign nation of Ghana, the way to deal with it, I think, is to call them to the table. So it's not necessarily negotiation as such, but I think it's more of mediation and trying to understand what the root causes are. I think that if we only deal with the military side of things, mark my words, we will be down here in a couple of years' time discussing the same set of issues. This time around, the group would have probably even expanded their capability and scope and would have been launching more daring one-off attacks against, maybe bridges or police stations or, other strategic state facilities.
So what? The state should sit down with them and say what? We beg you, stop.
It's not begging them stop.
And show them understand. And show them the fact. And show them the fact of law. That as the laws of this country, the laws regarding our territory and everything are concerned, there is nothing like a Western Togoland that is separate from the Ghana today. The people in the group or the leaders understand, I am sure,
that there is nothing like Togoland as it exists, right? But people have been poisoned over time to come to believe that the Western Togoland has never really been a part of Ghana. That sentiment still festers among some members in the community and in these groups. So I don't think that just going in there and just arresting them and just, putting them in jail would really resolve that hard up or pent-up frustrations that the groups have.
Let me come back to the studio.
To look at the history of conflict, look at what is happening in Cameroon with the Ambazonia secessionist movement, or even in Nigeria with the Biafra war led by Colonel Ojukwu in the late 60s. Similar undertones, but the military approach or the militaristic approach has actually ended up elongating or compounding the issue. And that's where I really think that, yes, you can address the military aspect, at least in the short term. So we've seen some arrests, but without really trying to work on the core drivers, without trying to bring the group to the table to actually discuss both the legal, the social issues, the supposed, or the renewed ethnic sentiment for a pan-Ewe nation. Right. Without addressing those things, I don't think that we would have solved the issue. We will be here.
Thank you. Let me come back to the studio and let me begin with Richard. And Richard Anyagba. Now, I was referring earlier to a law that Isankoma brought to our attention sometime this week about the Prohibited Organizations Act 1976. So as far back as 1976, by an SMCD or SMC decree, we had prohibition of the Togoland Liberation Movement, etc. And the law says the following organizations are hereby declared unlawful and prohibited, namely the organization known variously as the Togoland Liberation Movement, TLM, the Tolimo, the National Liberation Movement of Western Togoland, and NLMWT, and guess what? Any other organization, howsoever called, whose objects, those who are making the law were sure what they were doing. Yeah. Howsoever called, whose objects include advocating and promoting the secession from the Republic of Ghana of the former British mandated territory of Togoland or part of that territory, or the integration of that territory with a foreign country. Says without prejudice to the generality of paragraph B of the subsection paragraph B of subsection 1, the President may, by executive instrument, declare any organization to be an organization to which that paragraph applies, and any other organization so declared is an organization to which that paragraph applies. Now, if you are caught in doing the things that the law talks about, you are committing a criminal offense, and in fact, you could be looking to going to jail for about 5 years or paying a hefty fine. This is the approach some say we should go. Yeah. And just a while ago, Ace supplies me another set of information about our various other laws and the constitutions over the period, which are very clear that the particular area being talked about has always remained and been part of Ghana. Yeah. And so there is no any, place that is separated. The approach is that legal way, let's go. Dr. Bamia says, no room for any engagement. Yeah. When you listen to people like THEO ACHEAMPONG, Kwesi retired Colonel Festus Abuaje, who have an experience and say you can do that, nonetheless, try a certain mediation negotiation. What do you say about that?
Well, something I think that you are clear in your mind when you hear this and the position of the law that there is no room for any such negotiation. And the question is, how do you even begin? Who do you begin to talk to? What legitimacy, you know, do they bring to the table?
Right.
I mean, what is their standing in that conversation that we are the ones who want to succeed? On whose behalf are they working? You understand? So clearly, there really cannot be any such discussion. And then you see, and even in the context in which this is happening, they don't have a program that in any way resonate with the people. So what they are seeking has nothing in connection with the will of the people. So on whose behalf are they coming to the table? And then when you do that, it's a slide, right? Literally. So any number of people can get up and say, okay, well, we too, we want to claim this piece of land, and therefore you have to bring them in the interest of peace. So really, that's the way to go. Now, the law is very clear, and I am concerned in a way that how you address this, because some of these things, they quickly will cascade out of control if in attempting to deal with them, you use excessive force, which was what the president was talking about, and clearly it's happened in other places where the use of excessive force actually drove people to the point of radicalization, where they also would want to respond in some measure. So it needs absolute tact in dealing with this in ways that helps keep the unity of the country intact. So there are many, many different ways we can deal with it, but I don't think that negotiation is one of them. Okay. Clearly, that is actually worsening the situation. If we go, yes, we go to that point. Yes.
So look, Sammy, you have a certain disposition because you are ranking on foreign affairs. Dr. Bombande is saying, look, let's treat them humanely. Once they are arrested, let's not treat them in a manner that breaches their human rights and everything. I'll be the last to say do anything that infringes on their human rights. But when you listen to people, people like those I have read, they say treat them as terrorists. Kobna Tabedu sends a message. I can't read what he wants us to do to them. Actually looking for a way that will crush them. Including executions, but okay, you have to follow the law. Now, what does President Mahama mean when he says they are being treated with kid gloves? Practically, that's what he's saying, that President Akufo-Addo is not on top of the job. What does he want the president to do? Go get them arrested, shot in broad daylight, as some people say, do something like that to one or two of them, the rest of them will shut up forever?
So President Mahama is clear in his mind that having been commander-in-chief before and having been confronted with this threat which has been with us for generations, he, as he said eloquently, managed to use superior intelligence to be ahead of the activities of this group. And he expects the current commander-in-chief to do the same. Look, let's face it. We have on our face an embarrassing security failure, a totally abysmal intelligence gathering and analysis regime which has led to this. To have 2 police stations, to have barricades erected, and to have these persons plot, plan, train, weaponize, get radicalized, have camps in our jurisdiction.
At least there was intelligence that foiled arson on the whole central market. You don't acknowledge that?
I say that intelligence could even be faulty intelligence. It shouldn't have been the actionable intelligence. Sometimes in these matters, and if you are conversant with these groups, right from Algeria to Cameroon to Nigeria, Boko Haram and all, sometimes they can mislead security agencies. For all you know, they never plan to attack the whole market. Because if you look at their modus operandi now, it's clear that they have targeted state installations to send a message to the Ghanaian government that, look, we have declared war. It's a declaration of war, really, that we've declared war and we are coming for you. So, police stations, the district assembly office, And to even further ridicule us the more and make light of the response, after all the deployment, 2 days later, they strike again at another state installation, the STC yard, and burn down buses. So it's clear that we can do better with intelligence gathering, actionable intelligence, and acting swiftly. Look, you have a very elaborate security architecture now. You have a minister in charge of national security, you have a minister in charge of the interior, you have a minister for defense, you have a minister of state at the interior ministry in charge of security. You have a national security advisor, probably the most elaborate security architecture we have had in the history of this country. And so it is unpardonable to have these things happening. I mean, to the extent that even when you have increased visibility, when you are present in Ho, and a great deal of soldiers have been deployed in the VOLTA region, and yet these people are still staging successful attacks, that must worry us. And I believe that's what President Mahama is saying. Now, it is important to come to the matter of how do we deal with this? Do you go all out brute force, or you sit and negotiate? I am in the middle. I take the view that we should be more nuanced about the response, particularly guided by history. Many people do not know that on the day Ghana was celebrating its independence, March 6, 1957, this group, led by its leader, the Togolese Congress, which was led by S.G. Anto, engaged in violent insurgencies all over the country, still claiming that their territory was not part of the Ghana unification project. They were rounded up. Nkrumah used brute force. On the 11th of March 1958, S.G. Anto, the leader of the Togolese Congress, Kojo Ayeke, and Alex Odame were found guilty of various crimes of violence and sentenced to 6 years in prison. Surprisingly, a few months after, in June 1958, a jury at the Court of Appeal acquitted them, saying that the procedure that the jury had used was irregular and illegal. And those interested in this particular matter, I recommend Dr. Obed Samuel's book, The Political History of Ghana. He lived it, experienced it, and he's documented in great detail what happened. So you've seen that in Nkrumah, Achampong, they use a lot of force. But it does appear that the other side of using brute force is that if care is not taken, you easily create martyrs. So there are some of these people who are martyrs. And so generations that come after them feel that they must also continue the struggle. So I am in the middle going for a more nuanced approach. Yes, the security agencies should be
I have heard you, but I haven't heard clearly what President Mahama meant when he says that
I thought I addressed that earlier.
President has been weak at dealing with it in the manner he has dealt with it.
Let me be clear again. Let me be clear.
Hold on. Let me go to the phone lines, and
but I'm sure you give me a chance to respond.
We have the rare privilege of speaking to the Reverend Chris Hesse. I'm sure most of you know that name.
Oh, yes.
He's been blessed, and he's 88 now. Reverend Chris Hesse was president in Nkrumah's photographer. He actually made a film in 1956 called The Plebiscite. It chronicles everything about the Transvolta Togoland brouhaha. We bring him on to share with us, because if you read our history and the laws, it is very clear. One thing is clear, there's no doubt, that Nkrumah had a strong hand in making sure, first, that these tribes were decimated, as in the issue of tribal, conduct. Yeah. Conduct that was tribal in nature, that jeopardized the unity of Ghana, was not allowed. And then subsequently, he made the laws that you could tell that were to put all of these things in perspective. We have the Avoidance of Discrimination Act, for example, that was passed to, stop all of these things. Now, Reverend Chris Hesse, thank you very much for joining us on NewsFile.
Yeah.
How does it make you feel when you hear about these disturbances in the name of a certain part of this country, falsely said not to have been unionized with Ghana?
Good morning. The way things are going, that's why today I'm on air. So the way things are going, since I see people are contributing wrongly to the true facts. You see, the film industry, which will have been sold, made films and spoke about the truth. When people write books, normally add their own feelings. But with the film, we show what people actually, what people spoke, what people said. So there's no distortion. You hear what they said. You see? So on the film, there's a film we shot on the plebiscite. It educates everybody. By looking at that film, all these things will die quietly. Because I think all these young guys causing this problem, they were not born. So they've heard something from their fathers who were maybe children during those the 56, So let's go back to the film. This film is in London. Samboku Jato knows a lot about it. All the government know about this film. I've been appealing to them to go to release the films to us so that we see our history. Let's go back to our history. All these films are in London. Let's pay the laboratories to digitize and send the films back to Ghana so that we know our history, we know the truth, and the truth will make us free. So let's go back to the plebiscite film, and see the truth. People who signed the agreement, the UN people who signed, all these things are there. I was in the camera system, but I shot a lot of material. So why are we wasting time and talking as if we brought Ghana? No. The history is there. So once again, I'm appealing to our government to send the money so that all these things from independence to now will be released to Ghanaians, for the average Ghanaian to see where we came from and compare to where we are. You see, and moreover, I was shocked last time. I was strolling in front of my house when people were talking about this same thing, and they were tracing the problem back to Bafo Sakoto. You say Bafo Sakoto was the founder of the NLM, and they brought up the UP, and the UP brought up the NPP. What has that got to do with the plebiscite? There's a lot of distortion going on. So please, let's go back to the film. Let's bring back all these films and show and educate Ghanaians. I think.
Okay.
I'm done.
All right.
I'm done.
Thank you.
We are wasting time. What we are talking, we are wasting time.
Okay. Reverend Chris Hesse, thank you so very much for making the time to talk to us. And Reverend Chris Hesse was President Nkrumah's photographer. He made a film in 1956 about the plebiscite, and it chronicles everything about the Trans-Volta Togoland discussion. He feels, and I think that is so right, that if this film is made available, it could be part of the biggest tools of educating people to know the right things and reject the falsehoods about what is leading to all of this. Now, gentlemen, I'm going to give you just a minute each, and then we conclude this discussion, take a break, and return to deal with find out how the two political parties intend to deal with the matter of corruption. Yes, so Richard.
Okay, well, so very quite interestingly, I thought we were projecting a discussion of, how to fix this problem and the challenges. But my brother drifted quite away from that norm. You see, there is no security failure. What obtains is the politicization, the bastardization of the security, which is being led, unfortunately, or enabled by the former president. There is no way myself or my brother knows about what the security is doing, in which case you say they have failed. He has not been briefed on that matter. And if he's been briefed, he cannot speak to it.
You're saying that citizens do not have a right to critique the work of the security.
They can.
And they must at all costs be involved in the security operations to know that something has gone wrong.
No, but the point I am making is that what he claims is a failure, it's not a failure, but what happens and is happening, led and enabled by the former president, is the bastardization of the security.
Is it really led and enabled by the former president? Before the former president spoke, did you hear sections of citizens talk about intelligence failure?
Which citizens were NDC?
Really?
Yes, absolutely. And I heard my brother said that before. And even to the extent there are individuals from the NDC who says that the action by this group was not treasonable.
You have to be NDC. So, you mean you have to be NDC, or I have to be NDC?
No, is it
to subject what happened to a certain criticism that, for example, this country and the security claims that it has been aware of the activities of this group for all these years. They showed up, did some things in 2017. They did in 2018. We have been arresting them, bits and pieces. And we were aware of their presence and how they were hoisting flags around, in Togo, areas in Togo. And we just woke up one morning and they held everybody to ransom.
Yeah.
You're saying that citizens don't have a legitimate right to ask questions, but they must be NDC to follow the security
so that's a misunderstanding what point I'm making. My brother made a point that security failure has been occasioned. And I'm saying that that is not the case. What has been occasioned, or what we're seeing, is the intentional bastardization of the security to call it by that name. That's what has happened.
Are you concerned, as a citizen, are you concerned about what happened when this group was able to completely dominate the police the way they did in the region?
Absolutely.
You're concerned?
I'm concerned, and that's what we've been talking about.
And you would applaud the security for the period in which it took them to get in. We have heard Dr. Kwesienin and others, foremost experts, say that this was abysmal.
Well, you see, the issue, if you want to look at it very clearly, the question you want to ask is that what else could have happened that didn't happen? That's when you are looking at it objectively. So that, but for the intelligence and the work that was done, you could have seen something much more grand than what you saw.
Have you been to the region after what happened?
I was in the region when this happened.
Okay, so you have seen that there is security presence almost everywhere.
Yes.
What happened? Why couldn't something, a semblance of that, have happened earlier?
Well, you see, there are parts of this conversation that probably I don't want to drift into, but the key issue is that this would have been much different, would have been talking about a much different story, okay, than what we are dealing with, but for the intelligence and the work they've done.
And heads of the security should have been resigning. If we had to talk about a much different story.
Something. Yeah, so you are not talking about that because they were working. You see, and I find the discussion rather counterproductive when instead of dealing with the issue, some have chosen to actually bastardize the security. So I just want to make the point that that is not what happened, but what is happening, which sadly is a conversation by my brother to say, is there a deliberate attempt to bastardize the security? Why is it that in America you had 9/11 happened, right? Is it because the intelligence wasn't working, right? But these things, rather than...
What a comparison.
No, I'm just saying. It's not a comparison. I'm just telling you an instance.
Okay.
Look at that and tell me, was it a failure of intelligence? You cannot say that. Okay? So the point we need to deal with is not the politicization of that and the bastardization of security, but so, what effort we must put in to address the issue.
And you have been spot on what we should do. Yes, your final 1 minute.
So many things to say in a few minutes. First of all, I was talking about...
Yes, and I forgot about THEO. Sorry, forgive me. And you also get your final 1 minute. Yes.
I was talking about a more nuanced approach. So I'm for superior intelligence. So that's the security aspect. I am for public education. So Reverend Chris Hesse is right. We should put out more correct information because there's a propaganda warfare out there. And that public education should all the way dovetail into even our curriculum. Let's bring back history and teach the right history. It's important. Number 3, let's avoid discriminatory politics, discriminatory pronouncements. If you go to the VOLTA region, a lot of young people feel that, you know, in the political discourse, in the things that are said, it comes to registration, it comes to elections, the targeting of particular constituencies and all of that. All of those things are feeding into a certain narrative that we must address. Now I come to the fact that
you agree that concerns of underdevelopment are never a basis for what is going on.
There can be no justification. There can be, there's no justification. I have been clear. Last year I condemned this. At every platform I condemn what is going on. There can be no justification. I also want to bring to the attention of all of us that, look, we are now seeing 3 different flags. So we are not talking about only one group. It appears that Papavi's group, the Homeland Study group, has mutated. There's a certain metamorphosis going on. Radicalization has set in of different groups. We have counted 3 flags in the VOLTA region. And as we have seen elsewhere with terrorist organizations, it's possible for even bad guys, evil elements, to take advantage of so-called secessionism and engage in mercenary activity and destabilize.
There's a tweet by somebody who...
So how sure even are we that those who are doing this are secessionists?
There was a tweet, I think it was from the Restoration Group, seeking to
dissociate itself.
Applaud the Homeland Study Group, that if that's what they are doing, then they all have one agenda, so it's good.
So you see, we should be mindful of the threat that others can hide behind this and perpetrate more harm. But you have to permit me to quote the report of the Constitution Review Commission. Very important. This matter...
Straight. Let's move on.
You know, they received a petition on this matter. And it's important to remind all of us that the chair of the Constitution Review Commission, who did such a fantastic job, all analysts, all experts agree on that, is Professor Emeritus Albert Kojo Fiajo, who is a prominent son of the VOLTA region. They write at page 786, the second set of submissions concerns the 1956 plebiscite, which resulted in the former British Togoland joining the Gold Coast in an independent Ghana in 1957. The submissions on this matter centered on the absence of an official document evidencing the union of the former British Togoland, which was a trust territory under British administration, and the former Gold Coast. The submissions also called for recognition in the constitution of the former British Togoland as an identifiable people and a constituting element of Ghana. Other persons who made submissions on this issue added that Ghana and the former British Togoland should come to new terms of agreement in which the latter is recognized as an independent entity within Ghana as exists between Tanzania and Zanzibar. The Commission observes on the issue of the status of the former British Western Togoland that Part 9 of the 1957 Constitution of Ghana defines the regions of Ghana at independence. It provided that the Trans-Volta Togoland region became part of the territories of Ghana and subsequently became Trans-Volta Togoland region. It further added Northern Togoland to the Northern territories to make up the Northern region. The Commission finds that all the submissions which were made on the former British Togoland were made largely by members of the movement called the Western Togoland Restoration Congress, which is based in some parts of the Volta region. The submissions on this matter did not receive support from any other region. The Commission finds that some of the petitioners on the British Togoland issue indicated that the relationship that should exist between the former British or Western Togoland and Ghana should be similar to the relationship between Tanzania and Zanzibar. The Commission further finds that the island of Zanzibar gained independence from Britain in December 1963 as a constitutional monarchy. In 1964, a revolution led to the establishment of the Republic of Zanzibar and Pemba. In that same year, the Republic was subsumed by the mainland former colony of Tanganyika. This United Republic of Tanganyika and Zanzibar was renamed United Republic of Tanzania, of which Zanzibar remains a semi-autonomous region. This was achieved through an agreement called the Articles of Union, which was incorporated in the 1964 interim constitution as the Acts of Union. The most notable feature of the Acts of Union was the establishment of the double government structure that is also part of Tanzania's current constitution. This structure included one government for the Union and one largely autonomous independent government of Zanzibar. The president of Zanzibar also served as vice president of the Union.
Can we get to the recommendation?
So, the commission observes that the position and request of the Western Togoland Restoration Congress, the main group behind this submission, has the potential of affecting the sovereignty and continuous existence of the nation-state called Ghana. To accede to the request for autonomy, even within Ghana, as exists in Tanzania and Zanzibar, may open the floodgates for other constitutive parts of Ghana prior to 1957 to make similar requests. This may eventually lead to the breakup of the unitary republic. The Commission advises that there is no basis for the grant of such petition, and the nation should be mindful of such potential divisive tendencies. Having regard, as I conclude, having regard to the length of time Ghana has been administered as a composite and unitary state, the well-established rules of international law on the intangibility of established frontiers and the territorial integrity of a state, as well as the interests of nation building, the Commission finds the petition baseless, potentially disruptive to the established constitutional order, and thus unworthy of consideration.
Thank you very much. Now, on that very, very sound, educative note, from a Constitution Review Commission that we invested so much into to bring us the biggest socio-political data so far ever gathered in this country, unfortunately, which is sitting and gathering waste instead of being implemented. Let me get to Theo for his 1 minute, and then we'll draw the curtains on this subject. Hello, Dr. THEO ACHEAMPONG.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah, so, I mean, the question that I see on your screen is, can it be nipped in the bud? Yes, I think so. And how can that be done? I support the calls that have been made. I think education, education, education. In fact, in my own research, I've come across a lot of archival materials, some of which are public, others too that can be accessed, including what the Reverend Hesse also suggested to be used in the public education campaign. Secondly, I also think we must actually work on back channel routes, for mediation. I don't think we should discount that. Use the Regional House of Chiefs, use the Council of State, etc., to work on that. And finally, on number 3, the threat is credible. Let's not just wish them
Dr. THEO ACHEAMPONG, Dr. THEO ACHEAMPONG, the pursuit of this mediation negotiation, I can tell you that apart from what even the politicians here are agreed and reject that approach, there's majority of the people, discerning Ghanaians home and abroad, who are sending us messages right now and saying your proposition should not be encouraged 1 minute. And that's what Dr. Bawumia said is the way to go. There are people who have asked the question, mediation for what? What are we going to negotiate? Our constitutions, starting with number 1, the Independence Act, 1957, the Independence Act is very clear that what they are pushing doesn't exist. If you look at the Gold Coast Constitution, Order in Council 1954, is very clear that what is being talked about now is false. There is not a question of the lack of a union at the time in which they speak about. If you say you are underdeveloped, so we come and sit down with you and negotiate that what?
Yeah, so the mediation, or to use another word, negotiation, is not about carving out a territory, right, or creating a semi-autonomous state. It's actually bringing the people around the table to talk about the issue. clearly it's not going to be that they would end up giving or carving a piece of Ghana out to them. That is settled legally, constitutionally. I have no issues with that. But what I'm suggesting really is that these are not meant to be open-ended conversations, but you can use back channels. You can use the chiefs, you can use the Council of State, you can use all these other eminent groups to reach out to the groups to, you know, resolve some of the concerns that they have. That's really all that I'm calling for. And then on top of that, you have your public education that you have to deepen. Okay. Thank you. Now I'm going to read just one or two messages from Kweku Bako and one other to end this. The Catholic Standard editorial for this edition says, don't trivialize secessionist activities. And the editorial is very emphatic. And when you refer to the Catholic Standard, take your mind back to the military regime's era and what the Catholic Standard represented for Ghana. Yeah. The strongest voice, if you like, around the time, one of the strongest voice. Now, Kweku Bako says, the military side of things, quote unquote, military side of things, is triggered if, operative word is if, the secessionists apply force and violence in pursuit of their treasonable mission. Negotiations or dialogue to what end? Negotiating our territorial integrity and national sovereignty away or what? Negotiations or dialogue have never resolved such matters, especially when and where the rebels or secessionists resorted to force or violence without the legitimate entity or state government applying counterforce to subdue and bring them, that's the rebels and or secessionists, to the table to surrender and abort their mischief. Yes, in the long term, balanced, equitable, and national economic development programs and political decentralization would facilitate the reduction and growth of the insurgency, especially help isolate the leadership and intellectual base of the secessionist movement. I read a very final one from a mentor, Kweku, and he says, the point ought to be made very clearly. There is nothing to negotiate, absolutely nothing. Chapter 2, 4.1, Directive Principles of State Policy, is emphatic about what constitutes the, you mean chapter 6 of the Constitution, what constitutes the territory, okay, yes. Chapter 2, yeah, you're right. Yeah. What constitutes the territory of Ghana is what we inherited on March 6, 1957. How can that be negotiated with a band of criminals? If we do, we open the door to copycats. What stops Ashantis or Moshis or Hausas from following suit to regain their pre-1984 kingdoms? Citing poverty or marginalization as a cause is also completely unacceptable. Wasn't Rawlings and Ewe head of the state of this country for almost 2 decades, along with many prominent Ewes? What about poverty in what used to be the Northern Territories and the discrimination against them, plus their consignment to menial roles in our society? One can understand a call for education so that the young people of the VOLTA region can better understand Ghana's history, and that should be done. But to negotiate to compromise on what? Land, water, or air? Stop it already. We'll take a break here. We'll be right back to ask which of the two parties is serious about fighting corruption. You're welcome back. This is NewsFile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And as you know, here on NewsFile, we put Ghana first.
There's so many messages. I wish I could share a few more with you before we proceed, but let's continue with the discussion on the corruption fight. But remember always that this show is brought to you by Bank of Africa, strong as a group and close as a partner. MTN everywhere you go. Ashesi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Consolidated Bank Ghana, we stand with you. Duraplus, where Duraplus goes, water flows. Waylead, we build home for you. Star Assurance, your solid partner. And Rehoboth Properties. My guest, Samuel Okujeto Ablakwa, is still here in the studio with us to discuss the manifesto, replacing or taking the place of Richard Ahiagba, Executive Director, Dankwa Institute, is Yao Boabe Asamoah, the Honorable MP for Adentang and Director of Communications of the New Patriotic Party. Mr. Boabe Asamoah, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Boabe Asamoah.
Thank you very much, sir.
Great. Okay. So clearly understood that this is an area of comfort for you. You had been in the area of the good governance and anti-corruption fight, civil society, before you got into mainline politics. We remember you with the Ghana Integrity Initiative stuff. So clearly, you must have assisted your party in a great deal in determining what deserves attention as far as corruption is concerned. Do you think, start off, do you think that you have done well enough by simply just telling us what institutions or laws you have passed over the period and spending just 2 paragraphs to say you will continue to fight corruption? Do you think you have done well enough with that as far as your manifesto is concerned?
Yes. I think it's the most important thing to do, that the manifesto recognizes what has been started. You need a very strong legal and institutional framework to fight corruption consistently, reducing human contact and improving access to services without that intervention. So these things we have been doing, the institutions we've been setting up, the rules we have made, the ones we are continuing to make, the investments in institutions to improve their staffing position and their logistics position in order to better deter, prevent, and prosecute corruption are things that are ongoing. President Kufuor started with quite a bit of it, delivering the Internal Audit Acts and the Procurement Acts and all that, and we have continued. So it is a question of not mere proliferation of acts or otherwise, but the implementation, the effective implementation of these acts that we have passed and the institutions that we have set up. So you will notice that the 2020 intent, the 2 paragraphs, it says clearly that we are going to continue improving the institutions. We are going to continue investing in the institutions and enhancing their capacity, which means the laws we have passed will ensure that they work. And then we are going to establish effectively the operational mechanisms for the ITI Commission. And that is a very big one. Right to information is a huge one. And that law lay in Parliament for over 21 years. This Parliament had the political will. This government engaged, had the political will with the Parliament to pass it. And now that it's been passed, it's the biggest window for sunshine into impunity. And if we operationalize that, even that alone, as an operational mechanism into the next 4 years, in addition to the Office of the Special Prosecutor, will be a huge, huge, huge advance in fighting corruption.
You make specific reference to the RTI, and President Akufo-Addo himself, when he was also leading the charge to ensure that it was passed into law, didn't mince words, including his independence anniversary speech, that the RTI was the most important piece of legislation, anti-corruption legislation. Have you followed what the RTI coalition has had to say about the rather unfortunate attitude in implementing the RTI?
Samson, it's not an unfortunate attitude. I sympathize with them. But let's face it, Samson, you are part of civil society in this country. You are part of an organization which is in the private sector that works, and that organization deals with the public sector. One of our biggest problems in this country is implementation. Implementation, supervision, enforcement, those are soft issues in public policy, and rolling out that policy, that really hampers our ability in this country. So yes, it is one thing passing the legislation, then it's another thing operationalizing it. And that is the challenge we face and we are going to confront. And that is why it is one of the two items going forward into 2020 that we've isolated. The item 1 says we will continue with everything we are doing. Then item 2 specifically isolates ITI and says we will implement it. So the challenge, and again, I want to re-emphasize that I sympathize with the RTI coalition when they complain about implementation. But it should be positive complaints. It should be about challenging our inability to be consistent with implementation. And therefore, as we go forward, I want the coalition to support government in allocating resources, support government in sourcing for staff, support government in establishing the working rules and regulations, and support government in dealing with the outcomes that the Commission delivers to the people of Ghana.
If there is one particular coalition or civil society that has contributed directly to assist a particular process, that will be the RTI coalition. And this RTI coalition, you know a lot more, that even the passage of the law, from day one, since 1999, when the first draft bill was done by the IEA, this coalition has been at the forefront with very, very formidable legal minds like Akoto Ampao, and they have drafted a number of documents to assist it and push for the passage. After the passage, they have still gone ahead to actually draft, rules to assist the process. And yet, this is the one law that we passed and decided to suspend the operation for 1 year. And then January, it was supposed to kick in. We are in October, and the basic structures still don't exist. Now, when they issued a statement this week, they asked the question, what have you also done about public institutions' attitude to requests for information? It's been very bad. There's been silence. There's no commentary from the government.
Samson, I am very, very proud of the RTI coalition. I'm a foundation member of the coalition through my work with Ghana Integrity Initiative. And illustrious legal minds, like you're saying, the late Darocha, IEA, the current head of the Electoral Commission.
The current Speaker of Parliament.
The current Speaker of Parliament. Fantastic people, strong legal minds. Akoto Ampao. Many people have supported that. And indeed, it's across the aisle. It's across the aisle because I remember we ran a training workshop with an international partner where then John Mahama, who was Honorable Deputy Minister of Information, came. I think he had just become Minister of Information. He came to open the workshop. And with Shraj, Emil Short, Jima Buedi, Henry Prempe, their works. That coalition is the biggest collection of minds, like you say. And I think that coalition has succeeded to the extent that finally the ITI is passed. It's our mutual challenge. Let us get it operational. Government is a bureaucracy. Bureaucracies have their ways. I believe very strongly that the passage of the law itself demonstrated more than enough political will on the part of government. Now, going into the bureaucracy of setting up the commission and staffing it and timelines and all that is where our implementation challenge as a snail-paced bureaucracy comes in. We cannot afford to let that slow us down too much. It's already slowed us down quite substantially. So going forward, post this 2020 election, I expect and I believe very strongly that the New Patriotic Party will win the election again and Nana will form the next government. I believe very strongly on evidence on the ground. And that going forward, the coalition should continue to partner government. The coalition should not spare government any blushes. Just like they've been producing papers, just like they've been producing warnings, that is the kind of, kick the bureaucracy in the ass approach that will fundamentally entrench sunshine in our regular dealings. Okay. Because it's all about sunshine.
All right.
So corruption is all about sunshine.
This may be very, very important, but let's not reduce it to an RTI discussion. But I was a bit disappointed to read that you put in your manifesto that the RTI, like you said earlier, had taken 21 years. And then you state in there that it has straddled 6 parliaments. I asked myself, why? The manifesto committee, didn't they consult Yaboabia Samoa or Akoto Ampao, that it has gone through only the 5th, the 6th, and the 7th parliament, and not six different parliaments. That was a blunder. I think it's unforgivable. And the coalition looks at it also, and it tells us a bit about how serious you may want to approach it. But I said, let's put that aside.
I accept responsibility. I was a member of the committee, the manifesto committee, and sometimes editing. You are familiar with editing. The more you look over a document, the less likely you will catch very tiny details as you can't continue to scan a document. I accept liability absolutely for that.
Thank you. Now, so the NDC, unlike the NPP, and I asked him whether he thought that just the 2 paragraphs, bullet points that they make, they say, number 1, continue to improve the financing of governance and anti-corruption MDAs, like the Ministry of Justice and Office of the Attorney General, Office of Special Prosecutor, Office of the Auditor General, a lot of questions there. Office of the Auditor General, NCCE, SHRAJ, and IOCO to enable them recruit, continue to train, and retain dedicated staff to support the fight against corruption. 2, provide resources for the Right to Information Commission to operationalize effectively the Right to Information law. Now, the critique by some is that there are aspects of the NDC's manifesto that clearly suggest that you are listening to the people and what they need now, and you are making provisions for them, solving their problems with your, seeking to solve their problems with your manifesto directly. Like when it comes to universities bill, you come clean, you say you're against it. When it comes to legal education, you say we are going to open it up in this manner because that's not what is being done. Now, when it comes to good governance and corruption accountability, as you had in your constitution, your manifesto, you have put a lot of things, but they are general and they are things we already know. You don't pinpoint one specific present concern and address it directly like you are doing with Okada and the rest of them.
I disagree with you on that.
In fact, you guys don't mention RTI at all, and the RTI coalition is not happy with you at all.
On the matter of lack of specifics, I disagree. I will have to concede on the RTI that the implementation challenges that we are confronted with should have been highlighted. Perhaps members of the manifesto committee took the view that once it has been passed, and we all have been part of this effort, and we must commend the RTI coalition. At some point, as NUC's president, I was an active member of the coalition. I want to believe that because it's been passed by Parliament, the implementation challenges did not feature because probably the hard work has been done.
And having mentioned certain peoples with it, I have to deliberately mention Alban Bagwin, Haruna Idrisu. They also did quite a good job with it.
Fantastic job with that. But in terms of specifics, if you come to page 110, for example, it says numerous corruption scandals, such as the Power Distribution Service, PDS, Bulk Oil Storage and Transportation, Boss Company, Australian Visa Scandal, Fraudulent National Youth Authority, NYA Street Lighting Contract, Kelney GVG Fraud, Kroll and Associates, the Galamsey Fraud on small-scale miners, Missing Excavators Fraud, and the Ejapa Royalty Scandal are further testimonies to this tacit support and endorsement of corruption. The next NDC government will thoroughly investigate all these acts of corruption. If you go out there, talk to a lot of civil society organizations, I listen to them, Dr. Steve Mantia, your own colleague, Manasseh Aziri Awuni, these scandals keep coming up strongly, and they want to see investigation. They want people to be held accountable. Even the Office of the Special Prosecutor earlier this week, raised concerns that the documents he's looking for on the Ejapa matter, the documents have not been forthcoming, and he's asking current authorities.
But these things you're talking about
be up and doing.
are not an institutional approach.
So if you are talking about specific examples, we list them. Now, in terms of the institutional approach, if you look at page 108, we say building strong institutions, 10.1. The NDC resolves to build strong institutions by taking bold steps to ensure increased and adequate funding and engaging well-qualified staff of proven integrity to manage and lead existing anti-corruption agencies. These institutions include Parliament, the Audit Service, the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice. I don't want to remind listeners what has happened at the Audit Service, how at the Commission on Human Rights you had the Deputy Commissioner position left vacant for virtually 3 years, Economic and Organized Crime Office, and the Financial Intelligence Center, among others. As part of our commitment to the fight against corruption, we shall adequately empower and resource the Office of the Special Prosecutor and other anti-corruption agencies to do their work effectively. 10.2, nepotism and growing corruption. In line with this renewed focus to strengthen the fight against nepotism and corruption, the NDC will introduce legislation to regulate agency representation. This is very important because this is missing in our laws, and other jurisdictions have done that, especially OECD countries. So agency representation and the conduct of business practices of multinational companies in line with international best practices. And here we discuss at length the matter to do with lobbying. Lobbying in other jurisdictions has been codified and is properly regulated. Here, we know it is going on, but we pretend that we don't know lobbying is going on. And that's what we mean by this particular, new piece of legislation we are proposing. We also say we will review and strengthen guidelines for political office holders, developed and launched by the previous John Mahama administration. Trust and integrity in leadership, 10.3. We say that as a party that believes that personal trust and integrity in leadership is needed for the development of our country, we also believe that Ghana can fully progress if we make integrity and transparency the cornerstone of our workforce at every level. And then we talk about launching Operation Stink, 10.5. We will, as part of the Integrity for Development Action Plan, launch Operation Stink. And this is our big idea under fighting corruption. And we say that this is an anti-corruption crusade that will involve massive, far-reaching, practical government reforms. It will be unrelenting against all corrupt political appointees, public sector workers, and their collaborators. The next NDC government will live up to its ideals and dismantle the tentacles of kleptocratic political octopus. So we spell out exactly what we mean by Operation Sting.
Words.
And we say that, look, at the end of the day, Samson, it's about track record. It's about the political will. President Mahama remains the only president in this Fourth Republic who has prosecuted his own. President Kufuor came close by prosecuting a minister, but he was of the PNC stock. Malamisa. President Mahama prosecuted his own successfully, and it's sad to say that he's still languishing in jail. Very sad. I do not intend to profit from his pain. Not at all.
Abuga Pili and
Yes.
Philippa Sibit.
Yes. Only President Mahama has achieved that. If you look at the most credible indicator, the Corruption Perception Index, President Mahama has given this republic the highest score of 48. The highest score. Indeed, President Mahama's worst performance of 43 is higher than President Akufo-Addo's best performance of 41. Because you know that the closer you get to 100, the cleaner your government. When you are approaching 0, you are the most corrupt.
You lost the elections on corruption.
So President Mahama has a far better track record. Under President Mahama, we didn't see this phenomenon of clearing house, that every appointee, even before investigations begin, the president clears them. You didn't see this intolerant posture towards anti-corruption crusaders, journalists and others. Look at what is happening to Operation Sting, for example, is similar to what President Akufo-Addo promised about the Anas principle. What happened? Anas's people are rather all apologies to the family of Ahmed Hussein Swali. We still can't find the perpetrators of that heinous crime. Never in the history of this country has an anti-corruption journalist.
And we must blame the president for that.
I am saying that you must create an environment that ensures that anti-corruption crusaders are safe, practice their work, whether as journalists or as investigative reporters, without fear. And you must protect them. You must not have a situation where people like Manasseh Azikiwe have to be whisked out of the jurisdiction by the Media Foundation for West Africa, for example. All these examples are a blot on the record of President Akufo-Addo. And we are saying that pound to pound, fortunately, this is an election that the two leading parties are presenting people with a track record. It is clear that President Mahama has a far superior...
The Manasseh Azikiwe story that is not actually told when it is told in general terms, because there was a certain involvement of the security apparatus presently constituted by President Akufo-Addo in assisting Manasseh and ensuring his safety and security. And upon his return to the country, it is the state security that is giving him cover.
Good to hear, but Manasseh Azikiwe himself has written copiously, that he felt safer practicing under President Mahama than under President Akufo-Addo.
There are people within the political parties, they don't need anybody to hire them and sponsor them to go and do wrong.
Agree.
They would sit back, watch you. Some of us, we sit here, we moderate a certain program in a certain way, and they feel there's a certain bias, and then they start attacking you. They may not have been hired by anybody. On their own, they may feel you have said one thing wrong or one thing critical of the president or some other member, and then they decide to attack you. It will not be because the state has recruited them to do that.
Agreed. However, how leadership responds is important. Is leadership responding in a way that seeks to give these people the opportunity? For example, when the Honorable Kenneth Japon started his whole campaign against Anas, you saw how tacitly state media and all of that gave him platforms, and he was being encouraged. You don't need to do things like that. You have to show that even when the renegades amongst you, and I agree with you that in every political party, there is a mix. There are people who will not, like the sunshine, and the fact that there are people who want to expose wrongdoing in their ranks and would want to, take it out on those people. It's important for leadership to offer protection. You have had some of these people, Manasseh himself, write and talk about how he was given protection by the President Mahama-led administration. You don't see that level of tolerance under President Akufo-Addo. This week, a video went viral of the Venerable PC Apiofori, who says that he regretted not taking an appointment from President Mahama when President Mahama called him to come and help him fight corruption, to look within right from the presidency. Because according to PC Apiofori, in the discussion, he told President Mahama, you know that me, I would go after all of you, including you who is appointing me. At the presidency, I'll keep my eye wide open. And he said, no, why not? Okay. I mean, I need you.
Okay, so you take a breather there.
And yet, when he made a similar request to the current president, he was rebuffed. And he regrets not taking President Mahama's offer.
Take a breather there. Okay, so I still have my RTI people sending me messages, particularly about the NDC not paying attention to RTI, which is a very big, instrument to fight corruption. And somebody, for example, says that under your section titled Freedom of the Media in the manifesto, you provide a one-liner that reads, quote, continue the implementation of RTI acts, and you put it under media, and it gives the impression as if you don't know what the RTI really is about, because it's not about the media. Now, the challenge thrown to the NPP, especially also by civil society, is that we set up a special prosecutor. And you remember how almost the entire nation rallied around the president, so excited about what the NPP wanted to do. Civil societies endorsed this and participated in processes to ensure this was done. And it was passed very quick. Some say over the period, what have we seen? So it's not really about telling us that you have passed legislation and you continue to work with them. They want to hear more than that. What do you say about that? Hello, Yao.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
I am glad you exposed the NDC's hollow anti-corruption manifesto. It's just English. Look at Operation Sting. Massive, far-reaching measures. What are massive, far-reaching measures? They are nothing. Far-reaching measures are concrete steps that you take, including the fact that they are talking about strengthening the Auditor General's office. And in 2014, the Auditor General's office didn't even have computers, much more logistics. Since 2014, we from 2017 have resourced that office massively, and in percentage terms, 28% in 2017, up in their budget, 77% in 2017, and then 2018, and now 27% in 2019. The Auditor General indeed came out to commend us. That is what we mean. When we talk about guidelines for public sector employees, we are actually about to pass the Public Officers Code of Ethics law. And it is something they hang around with for over 8 years. They couldn't do anything about. You talk about resourcing institutions. You must respect the outcome of institutional reports. They keep talking about institutions, and then they undermine those institutions by discrediting the investigative actions of those institutions. You can't blow hot and cold. But happily, they accept that they will continue the Special Prosecutor's Office. That is a very, very important one. Between the Special Prosecutor and RTI, I think that's the future of anti-corruption in Ghana. And I'll tell you why. Because the biggest problem of corruption in Ghana is impunity. Corruption is the ability of public officials to drain public resources with impunity. And why that impunity? Because they felt beyond prosecution, they felt beyond control, they felt beyond supervision, they felt beyond the law. They were the law. Now you have an office that is entirely different, independent of everybody, including an incumbent, and therefore nobody can do otherwise. And the record of that, interestingly, is Martin Amidu asking the finance ministry to furnish the documents from Japan. That the office is able to do that in an incumbent era is the kind of situation we are talking about. It is so important that an office that is capable of acting against past governments and current governments with full authority to do so is the one that leads the fight against corruption in Ghana. Because like I'm saying, and I'm repeating, that fight is about impunity. So what has the office done? I think the office basically, and I'm very, very frank and hard here, the office has operational and administrative aspects. I think as a new institution, the emphasis should have been on the ability to establish administrative workflow structures that will support its operational output. Unfortunately, the administrative part of it has been slow. It has been terribly slow. There have been public sparks about whether or not the office is receiving enough money or otherwise. And clearly, from the budgeted positions over the past 2-3 years, its budget, the last one was even bigger than that of the Attorney General's office. But you must have put in place administrative measures to draw down on those budgets and use it to support your operational efforts. And I think that in spite of Mr. Amidu's sterling public record of integrity, his activism, when it comes to the administrative aspect of establishing a new institution, a very sensitive institution like the Office of the Special Prosecutor, perhaps we have more questions than answers.
So what people are asking, the generality of the public is asking is, this was one legislation, you had tremendous goodwill, and you passed it really quick, and we have spent the entire tenure of the regime, and we can't show, so to speak, any fruit from that office.
Something. Who is to show, the government or the prosecutor? That is the difficult, delicate situation we are in. Can the government wade in and show we are doing this with the special prosecutor? That will undermine the very independence. If you celebrate the passage of the law and the establishment of that office, you take credit for it, you would definitely take credit for what it does. Yes, so people have a right to ask what is going on. It's a legitimate question. I'm trying to explain the difficulty and the paradigms involved in that question. First of all, the fundamental pillar of that office is the inability of the incumbent government to manipulate it. Independent. If it is set up in such a way that the incumbent government can walk in and say, do this, don't do that, then it undermines the entire principle, which is that an office that can fight impunity in and out of government. So having set it up and having appointed the leadership, the government must stand back and let the leadership work. The government cannot wade in and out and ask questions of the office and demand answers of the office, which would appear to be undermining the independence that we all cherish so much. Because if it's the office is to succeed, it must be based on its independence. It must be based on its objectivity. It must be seen to be an office that is not under the dictates of anybody. As it stands now, clearly nobody can say that we are dictating to Mr. Amidu. And indeed, let me go back and say, not only was the setup failed, the appointment of Mr. Amidu was also failed. Why? Because it's unprecedented in African politics to have a high-profile personality from your opponent, your biggest opponent, head an office with capacity to cut off your head, literally. So that is the power that the Office of Special Prosecutor has. Can cut off your head.
But beyond the Special Prosecutor matter, Samuel Okujeto Ablakwa echoes another point that the conduct of the government itself the conduct of the government has been faulted to be problematic, where the issue came up about clearing agents, as the president was said to be clearing his appointees and so on and so forth. That was such a dampener on the fight against corruption.
It wasn't. I have addressed it earlier in my remarks, but I'm glad you bring it up so we can isolate it and address it. You see, Okoyeto and the NDC, because it's politically powerful and attracts votes, will lift a litany of events that they describe as corruption, fraud, scandal, even when those matters are stillborn. And in that sense, his audacity, when the same thing was done about that place, Waterville and that thing, Sofoton and all that, he was in the center of those things. Sofoton, Waterville, and all those things that happened. He was in the center, and they were listed.
Center as
now,
what? I was in the center as what?
Thing. In the center, ask yourself. So the
center as what? I was in the center as what?
They are in the center as what? The things you are listing. Who is responsible? Who is in the center as what? The things you are listing as fraud.
No. To be fair,
he was
when you name him
driving Isofoton.
No, when you name him, sorry, when you name him as being in the center, you should tell us how exactly you mean by being in the center. You mentioned Woyome and the rest of them.
Yes.
How do you mean by being in the center?
He had been the one pushing for the payments for Isofoton to go through.
Me? How did I do that?
Yes, that was what was being said in public at the time. It's the same thing he's saying now, listing things that, in the opinion of the MDC, is fraudulent and corrupt. Without basis, without foundation. That's what I'm driving at. That it is popular politics to do that.
So you are aware that what you are saying is without basis, but you think that you should, on such a serious platform, you should put it out.
Samson, I won't accept this. Have you allowed him to
what I will not accept, what I will not accept is your deliberate attitude to defame me.
You go on the internet everywhere, your name was there. That's what I'm saying, that you can't continue to make allegations against others when you haven't proven anything. What is fraudulent about a Japan that you have proved? That you are now calling a fraudulent deal.
Okay,
that's what I'm saying.
Just a second.
Just hold on. Let me address something.
With the greatest of respect, I'll let you do so. No, so now, with due deference to you as my senior at the bar.
Yes.
You name a person and you are not referring to any evidence whatsoever, and you are just saying his name was out there. I mean, is that the way you want us to have the conversation about fighting corruption?
I was drawing an analogy about the list he made. He said that Japan is fraudulent, this is fraudulent. He made a list.
I was reading from a manifesto what we will investigate. What we have stated we will investigate. I did not mention any name. What you are doing is mentioning a name, me directly, and attacking my person.
Google. Was your name not linked directly with Isofoton as being the one who was pushing for the payment?
How?
Is it not a fact?
How? Who proved that?
Was that? It's not for me to prove. That was in the public domain. That's what I'm saying, that now you are doing the same thing. You are putting things
I thank God the recordings of this program will be available after this program.
Is a Japan fraudulent?
Be prepared for the consequences. Be prepared for the consequences of your baseless conduct this morning.
All the personalities involved in the Japan, you have damaged their name immediately by saying that.
Did I mention anybody's name? We said we will investigate these matters. That is what is stated in the manifesto.
You used the word fraudulent. You said fraudulent.
Did I mention a name?
Fraudulent.
Did I mention a name?
That is fraudulent. And I'm saying that they're kind of, but was your name not mentioned on the internet?
Who has concluded when the manifesto says the next NDC guy will thoroughly investigate these acts? I'm reading from the manifesto.
You used the word fraudulent. You qualified it with fraudulent.
Okay.
You use fraudulent.
Okay. Let's proceed. Let's proceed this way.
That's fine.
This is for the benefit of the public.
Let's proceed this way. Let's proceed this way. Let's proceed this way. Methodology. No, hold on.
Let me withdraw whatever it is and move on. Whatever he doesn't like, I've withdrawn. Let me move on. Now I'm saying, whatever he doesn't like, I've withdrawn.
You cannot make specific accusation against you and say whatever I don't like, I withdraw.
Let's move on. Now I'm saying that the very way they say the presidency is a clearinghouse and otherwise is the fact that they are unable to build institutions. If you are building institutions, you don't undermine institutions by always attacking their conclusions. And that is what the NDC is doing in this current approach. the president, the clearinghouse, that. In one sentence, they wipe out the efforts of the entire anti-corruption agency network in Ghana. They cast doubt on their credibility. They cast doubt on their integrity. They are talking about going to employ people of integrity and capacity. Are they from Mars? Are those people Ghanaians? Are you saying that in one fell stroke, all the people who work in the CID are corrupt? All the people who work in BNI are corrupt. All the people who work in Yoko are corrupt. All the people who work in NCC are corrupt. All the people who work in Shraj are corrupt. That is the kind of far-reaching generalization.
But is this your interpretation, not overstretching the way the matter was put?
It is how it appears in public, because they are the institutions who are doing the investigation. Yoko. They are the institutions.
Why is it that? Why is it, for example, that when the MPP came to power, almost all the heads of some of these institutions were moved, removed, and then replaced? Does that suggest that those who were there were incompetent or something, or they were corrupt?
It is not enough to change the head of an institution. We live in a government where heads of institutions are sitting there, and the middle layer is acting against them. It's a fact. It's part of the implementation bottlenecks we are having. So we must begin to get to the point where we realize that the institutions are of the state and not of government. The institutions are of the state and not of the political party that is presently in charge of the government.
Okay.
When we get to that point, we will realize that objectively, every institution will be respected for its integrity based on the quality of its work. And institutions will feel protected enough to deliver the kind of work that will advance the public purpose.
Okay, yeah, I'm taking a quick break here. When we return, I'll ask you a couple of questions about what you have come under attack for, as in the government, by not political parties, but civil society. Civil society, in the history of this country, we are told, there's never been a time when civil society comes together in the way they have been doing in fighting a government for some of the things in this area of corruption we are talking about, including the Auditor General's office. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
You're welcome back. This is NewsFile, and my guest are Boabing Asamoah, the Honorable MP for the Adentan constituency, and also the Communications Director of the NPP, Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa, the Honorable MP for North Tongue, and ranking Foreign Affairs in Parliament. Now, this show is brought to you by Bank of Africa, MTN, Ashasi University, Consolidated Bank Ghana, Duraplus, Waylead, Star Assurance, and Rehoboth Properties. Now, you mentioned in your manifesto that you are going to do certain things to strengthen institutions, including the Auditor General. Yeah. And I told Boabing Asamoah that I'll come to that question. Now, in the World Bank's latest publication, it's a report titled Enhancing Government Effectiveness and Transparency, the Fight Against Corruption. They take about 3 countries to study about how corruption is fought using the Auditor General. And they spend such enormous time on Ghana's Auditor General audit service, but they have a lot of emphasis and focus on Daniel Yaodomolevo and using him as an example for all other countries across the world on how to fight corruption. What that tells me is that that institution in Ghana is one of the best and selected among 3 to use as an example for the world. So what exactly are you going to do to that institution, which is already a shining example?
Well, I think that we are clear at page 109 of our manifesto, where we state in specific terms that we will strengthen the Auditor General's office by safeguarding its independence. Safeguarding its independence. We are of the view that the Auditor General must be given free room to operate, and that there should be no interference. The interference on the scale that we have seen. I mean, the whole Domolevo episode is a classic example of just how to allow corruption to fester, to thrive. You do not do this just because the Auditor General decided to go after senior people or the so-called untouchables in your government. And we all know the facts surrounding this matter. As soon as he started to go after this Kroll and Associates matter, we saw how elements within this government came after him. The court cases, proceed on leave, the lock to his office door has been changed. I mean, it's the first time that in the Ghanaian public sector we are hearing that when you are asked to proceed on leave, the lock is changed.
What is that thing that you say you will do?
We are saying
his independence.
We are saying that if you look at the laws now, if you look at the current architecture, the framework allows for that independence to be respected. So just respect it. Just go by the laws. Do not interfere. Don't send letters and direct that he should be asked to proceed.
There's no independent institution that is not subject to the Constitution or one way or the other. So
exactly, we are all under the law. So, and it's human beings, it's a political leadership that follows the law, that ensures that the law is respected. And what we are saying is that safeguard the independence of that office, regardless of whoever is there, whether you like the person or not, whether the person is coming after you or not. That's why I say that the track record of President Mahama is very important.
I suppose we need to find time to take care of this topic properly, because the discussion on the secessionist group issue took quite a lot of our time. We've run out of time. I have just a minute for Boabing Asamoah. What assurance can you give that beyond the black letter words we find in your manifesto, there will be anything different in the fight against corruption?
Digitization is changing our human relations. All the things we are doing, the Companies Act we've passed, witness protection, the Insolvency Act, the e-commerce platform that we have put on the public procurement website, the standardization of user prices, as well as the intention to put in the office of the Auditor General a value for money unit. All the substantive things we are doing are reducing human contact with public services. And in that sense, we are reducing corruption rapidly. Petty corruption. We're also dealing with grand corruption at the highest level. Ask them in 2013-14, the report of the Auditor General's office. They couldn't even afford computers, only salaries. They're giving them only salaries. We have resourced that office.
I'm sorry, but we have run out of time. Thank you very much. Yao Boabinga Samoa is the Honorable MP for the Adentan constituency and Director of Communications of the New Patriotic Party. He has a very difficult task in that constituency that doesn't keep faith and fidelity to one MP. Also here is Samuel Okujetua Blakwa, the Honorable MP for North Tongue and Ranking Member Foreign Affairs Committee of Parliament. We had Richard Ahiagba, Executive Director, Dankwa Institute, and Dr. THEO ACHEAMPONG, economist, political risk analyst, and senior fellow, Imani Africa. I'm Samson Ladi Anyanini. This has been NewsFile. God willing, we'll come your way next week with another interesting edition of the show. Forgive us for not being able to read all the tons of messages that you sent. Have a good afternoon.